The Great Pacific Garbage Patch seems to be changing, but not in a good way. It's not because we've gotten more eco-friendly. Years ago, I volunteered to help out on a cleanup expedition. I was fresh out of college and came from a family just rich enough to let me put off seeking a job for a few years. There was one certified marine biologist and a group of trainees, along with 2 seasoned oceanographers. Then there were us volunteers. We were confined to the lower decks. The crew of the trolley was an almost stereotypically salty group who liked getting paid, but hated dealing with a group of mostly college-aged eco-warriors. I didn't blame them. Caring about the ocean honestly came second to me. I was there because I thought the marine biologist was super hot. She was in her early 30s and she already taught at university. I took one of her classes about deep sea ecology and loved it. But mostly, I loved staring at my professor in her form-fitting pants. I was just a horny scumbag who was hot for the teacher, is my point. She was married, of course, but that didn't stop a small army of 20-something dudes, myself included, from trying to hit on her. But anyway, she put together this expedition with her friends in oceanography. The university thought this ocean cleanup would be a great way to gain goodwill, and all they had to do was provide some eager students with some experience. For those who don't know, the Great Pacific Garbage Patch is exactly what it sounds like. Humans dumping garbage, primarily plastics, into the oceans caused this. Trash from nations all over the Pacific gets caught in those underwater currents which carry it around, until a lot of it gets caught up in this one spot, where the current meets in a sort of trash vortex which is currently twice the size of Texas and growing. It's not a trash island though. A lot of the trash sinks to the bottom. The rest just turns the water soupy. Most of it is floating plastics. There's debris from Japan to the US. It's bad enough for sea life as it is, but all that plastic is dissolving and becoming microplastics, which flow all over and poison everything. Fish eat or inhale them. Other things eat the fish, including us. It's all very bad. There have been a few efforts to clean the patch, but it's an uphill battle. Ours was just a small volunteer group of college kids. All we were doing was hauling mounds of trash aboard that we planned to sort through and catalog. My hot professor and the oceanographers were also taking tests of some sort. I chatted up all the pretty girls I could, only pretending to care. Well, half pretending to be fair to myself. We sorted through this weird muck, the occasional disgusting carcass, plastics, trash, and seaweeds for a few days. One evening, I snuck above the deck because I heard the professor was performing a dive for something, and I was hoping to catch a look at her butt in a form-fitting wetsuit. God, I was such a pervy little shit. By the time I made it, she was done with her dive and discussing something with the crew of the ship and the oceanographers. I sat there, drooling over her, until her words finally cut through the haze. Something was moving within the mass. Something big. Could a whale have gotten caught up in it? I don't think it was a cetacean of any kind. I'm telling you, something covered in trash reached for me. That doesn't sound possible, but we've gotten some very strange readings. Some sort of biological marker, something warm in all the trash. What could it be? What could survive? I don't know, but I'm not sure this expedition was safe. We were all cut off when the entire boat lurched. Everyone, from seasoned sailor to idiot collegian, was knocked off their feet from the sheer force. My dumbass, who had been pretending to be a sailor and casually leaning on the railing so I could steal side glances, was damn near thrown overboard. The railing bruised my chest, and I scrambled to grab something before I tumbled over. I managed to entangle myself in some rigging and fishing nets before the rest of me tumbled right over the edge. I held tight, even after I smacked into the metal hull. I immediately began screaming for help. My professor reached me first, struggling to her feet and racing to grab a hold of my arm. A few sailors were right behind her. Soon, I was safe from falling, but still dangling over the side. I risked a look down into the waters. somewhere beyond the soupy plastics, I saw something move. It was this massive thing that I could barely see as its color matched the seas around it. It was hard to get a good reading on just how big it was, just because the water was murky, the daylight was fading, and I was a bit panicked at the time. As I watched, it descended into the murk. "I think a whale hit us," I called as the sailors and my professor worked to drag me aboard. "Ain't no whales around this time of year," replied the sailor. "I saw something under us too. It looked big. What else could it have been?" I was momentarily distracted. The professor pulled me aboard in such a way. Let's just say I was happy where my eyes ended up. I looked up at her. She was pale. She whispered something. I think it was too big to be a whale. She snapped out of it and glared down at me. "No volunteers above deck. Get downstairs." I didn't argue. The whole ship was in disarray. I helped clean up spilled equipment, food, and people for hours. I overheard the professor talking to her colleagues. "This isn't safe. If that was an animal, it couldn't have been. It moved on its own. Whatever. This wasn't safe. We need to get the kids and volunteers home. We should run tests on all the samples we collected." So, the next morning, the boat's crew turned us around and started the journey back home. My professor and the oceanographers were especially interested in all the muck we collected, as well as the various bones. I heard them say something about excretions. "Ew, have we been sifting through whale poop?" asked one girl. Someone else used the words stomach lining and digestive enzyme. What the hell is all this digestive system talk doing around piles of plastic and trash? Days later, we were back on the shore. The students got their credits. The university got to say, in ads, that they offered oceanography excursions and cared very deeply about the sea. And I got to hang out with my hot professor and some pretty ladies. I almost stopped thinking about everything and I went back to my life. That was all 4 years ago. I could have stopped caring then. But something about the night of my professor's dive, about her words and the thing I saw in the water when I almost went overboard, kept coming back to me. So I've been keeping an eye on the data about the Great Pacific Garbage Patch. On the surface, it looks like the patch has grown. But my old professor has been posting our findings. The mass itself is growing, but the plastic content, that mysteriously seems to be decreasing in some ways. I've been going over what I can remember. People who understand marine biology more than I think there was way too much organic matter within the mass. They thought some of it was plastic excretion, and some of it was something like stomach lining. I remember some of my professor's lessons. Some sea animals, like starfish, hunt by expanding their stomachs, using it to grab food and pulling it back in to digest. I know how it sounds. It sounds like I'm implying some sort of mutant starfish monster is eating plastic. At first I thought, great, nature mutated as a creature to help solve the plastic problem, right? But the whole thing has me uneasy. I sent my professor a message asking if my theory about plastic-eating animals could be true. To my surprise, I got a reply. A very detailed, cryptic reply. Dear, I shouldn't be answering you. Several organizations and governments have sworn me to secrecy. I came to the same conclusion. Some friend of mine collected data from the other part of the patch near the Philippines. They found the same biological marker within the organic compounds they collected. If there is some new species, it's present all throughout the garbage spread. The excretions we found contain plastics broken down to nearly a molecular level. I have no idea what anything could gain from plastic. But something certainly seems to be consuming it, breaking it down and excreting it. It's leaving clouds of even more dangerous microplastics. It doesn't seem to mind consuming sea life either. You remember the bones we hauled on board? They were partially digested too. She posted some charts detailing migration patterns of sea life. As you can see from this chart, whale, dolphin, and almost all of the migration patterns have changed rather drastically in the last 2 years. They're swimming hundreds of miles off course to avoid coming into contact with the garbage patch. I don't think it's the plastic they're avoiding. My superiors want me to stay quiet. I don't understand why. There could be a biological marvel evolving right before our eyes. Cryptic, right? I sent her a response back, wondering what she thought this new species was. For a long time, she didn't reply. I got a response yesterday, and it's the reason I decided to post this. My friends in the Philippines finished their test. The DNA matches my own data. Not just like it's the same species. 99.9998% chance the substance came from the same entity. She linked an article about a cargo line that disappeared mysteriously while traveling from Japan to Hawaii over a month ago. It was hauling industrial plastics. Seems it's searching for bigger sources of nourishment. Nature doesn't eat plastic. What could it possibly gain? None of our studies can figure out what it's taking. But it's taking something. Its DNA is like nothing I've seen before. But it seems to have some things in common with cephalopods. Perhaps a cuttlefish or an octopus. She linked to some other data she collected. According to the professor, the plastic content of the trash vortex of the patch appears to be decreasing exponentially. But further study revealed that plenty of plastic content is still there. It's just smaller. In the last month, almost a third of the content either disappeared or was reduced to microplastic soup. I could only reply with, "What do you think it means?" She didn't really answer that. She just said, "A significant amount of microplastic excretion is turning up outside the patch. It's moving. We don't know where it is. The muck it leaves behind. We're still studying." Just for the people that might not be following, a garbage mass bigger than the state of Texas had a third of its contents broken down in less than a month. Debris from those contents is cropping up all over. We don't know what's causing it. Whatever it is turning the toxic amount of plastic waste in the sea into even more dangerous microplastics. And now, it's leaving the garbage patch. My professor thinks whatever caused this phenomena is a single entity that closely resembles a cephalopod, and it might be responsible for the disappearance of a 300-meter cargo ship. Whatever it is, I think it's far too late to stop it. Edit. The transcripts of our emails disappeared. I can't get into contact with my professor. She said she was sworn to secrecy. She might be in trouble, but there's not much else I can do. What could an organic creature possibly gain from plastic? Be careful and watch the seas.